So the first thing that came to mind for me is the question of what's your relationship with loneliness like these days?
These days?
Yeah.
Okay, my relationship with loneliness. Okay, I'm gonna picture loneliness as kind of a personific personified thing in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. I think he's kind of relaxing on the couch right now in my mind. he's he's just chilling. He's not doing his. He doesn't need to do anything right now. He's relaxing. Yeah. So my relationship with him is, it's pretty passive right now, which is,
That's
there's not, yeah, we're not actively engaged with each other at the moment. We're not usually, like sometimes he'll come around and knock, want to get out, of that living room he's sitting in right now. but, most of the time he's just chilling.
that's great to hear. But like, so when he does come around and he is knocking, like, hey, Mary,
Mhm.
don't forget about me. I'm still here.
Yeah.
What kind of how do you get him to be quiet and go be chill and relax and sit back on the
Yeah.
couch?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like realizing that it's okay that he's there. They're there. She's there. Yeah, loneliness for some personified is there. That's okay. It's really nice to have the terminology for that feeling. And I think I've built that up from our conversations throughout the last few years, um, you know, and talking about it with friends and family. So even just having terminology for what I'm feeling, I think really helps, and yeah, yeah, it's nice to have like emotions even described to it, like there's sadness is right there, and isolation and feeling like for me I can anxiety kind of feels like it pushes me apart from people, and so yeah, that's when loneliness might be trying to get to me a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
um so you know I'm thinking how that plays out, but I definitely just make sure to acknowledge that it's there. And then I do the next best thing to help myself through that lonely moment, and yeah, so that could be a variety of things. That could be just texting somebody, it could be just really saying, I do need a break and telling myself that I don't have to always look for a social connection, or it's also or sometimes I'll just be like, okay, I know it's okay to fail and not have the correct
Yeah.
answer to
Mm-hmm.
things. Because I think that causes that isolation and loneliness for me is when I think I have to be perfect. And if I realize that I don't have to be perfect or correct all the time, then that can help me take a step back. Yeah.
And
And realize, like, hey, I'm friends with loneliness, like this is fine. Like, this is okay.
so if you were talking to somebody else who like they're not really sure, they think they might be experiencing loneliness, but they
Hmm.
don't, like what you mentioned was now you have terminology
Hmm.
that you can put with that. What
Hmm.
kind of advice or feedback would you have for that person who's like, I think I'm feeling this, but I don't really know what's going on. How could you help them in
Okay.
terms of terminology, I guess?
Oh, terminology. Okay, terminology. Yeah. Okay, I was going to say something else before you clarify terminology. I would actually
Well,
show them
say that, yeah.
your Instagram. I'd get them like I would say, "Hey, I had this awesome class called the loneliness solution during the pandemic, and I want you to know about my friend Nathan." So that's what I actually say when it comes up, especially with people who I feel like I have something in common with, and I feel like we're at that point where like I can give advice rather than being that listening ear, because sometimes somebody needs that listening ear, sometimes people want advice. So like but often what I've noticed and what I really feel like in my heart is that people, want resources, and it's not like they have to take it. If I just introduce it to them, then that way they can do what they need to do with it, you know. And like you said about this conversation, what we're going to say is what's meant to be said. It's the same sort of thing. If I hear somebody telling me that they're either anxious or lonely, especially because I feel like I really can relate to that one in a specific way, then I'm going to give them, the resources I know about. And the way I describe the class, because people are like, oh, what did you learn? And I'm, because I don't want them to feel like it's a secret. I think that
Me
is,
either.
yeah. Yeah, well, the class, but also what I learned from it, right? Yeah, we don't want it to be a secret. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I always say we started with our relationship with ourselves, so that we understand, our own needs and our own feelings and what we're feeling like we're missing. And then we talked about a relationship with others. And then we talked about how to resolve conflicts or issues that come up. And I think those all are things that you need to create a steady relationship with loneliness when it does come. And then for terminology, though, I will just kind of acknowledge their feelings and just say it back to them, and just so that they can hear it. Well, it sounds like you are really excited you found this group, because I'm in a meetup group that's really helped me with my loneliness. So I'll be like, I'm glad you're here and you found this group. And I hope you can continue, coming to the meetups. And then, like also in the meantime, um, you can look up some of these resources and, and so I might not just say like, I might just say, "Oh, I hear that you're lonely." Like I won't name it. Like
Yeah.
like if it's not appropriate or if it doesn't seem like the right thing, at the time. So the terminology won't always be, an asset, but I think I could also say, "Hey, yeah, sorry you've been lonely or haven't had friends." I'll just say kind of use what they're using and just reiterate it because I don't want the terminology to be the same for me as it is for them. Because
Yeah.
the what I there's this great song and I haven't looked at the lyrics yet because I just didn't have time before we met, but it's called "The Irony of Loneliness" by Jason Mraz. It just came out, and
Okay.
have you heard of it yet?
No. Uh-uh.
Yeah, so it's all about the irony of loneliness is that we feel the same at the same time. Like so we all feel, the same feeling. That's isolation, but all together we feel it. So, when I heard it, like I think like I think we like you and I uh we confirmed this conversation, I think, about the same time I listened to that song. So I had to mention it. And I'll keep mentioning it probably. But
Yeah, I
I want to,
definitely will check it out.
yeah. So irony of loneliness. Yeah. And it makes sense. It's like, that's the thing. It's like yeah, especially through times of isolation, of a group, whether that's the world, the pandemic, or say working from home, or like maybe like there's sickness, some other type of illness, or some other, maybe even summer break. um yeah, it's like we're all feeling a certain way, possibly, during that time.
And as I was listening to you share there, what I was going back to in our time together in the loneliness solution specifically was the fact that like everybody was coming from these different backgrounds, from
Hmm.
different places.
Hmm.
But what I remember most is everybody's ability to hold space for one another. Like there was
Hmm.
so much emotion, I feel like, that was shared in the container.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like a big deal. Like it was a big deal for the person who was in the middle of processing it in the moment, but it was like we had this, and I think it was unspoken to some level, where everybody was like, yeah, we got you, we're gonna hold the space for you and let you work through exactly what you need to in this moment. And I think that still amazes me to this day.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what's nice about doing group like group projects has a bad terminology from school, but I think like we can work on changing that narrative for several people. I think, when we have that time to get into groups and actually be able to support people how they need to be supported, and um or with the resources we have, of course, because we can't, if we can't fill from an empty cup. So it needs to be, yeah, it needs to be some balanced giving at that time. But yeah, I mean, I think it's true. It's, I think what that speaks to, I I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that, I mean, that speaks to, honestly, that speaks to your leadership and making sure that there's time for that, and making sure not to, and I think this is because now I've been kind of like disappointed by a lot of leaders again in my life, and I think some of it is just like could be done better, if we just really listen to people. And that doesn't necessarily mean fixing the problem. Like that,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean we need to um have all the answers at all. Like we like our ideas actually might be just neutral, or not going to be helpful, but just to give that time and space, to somebody. Like, what time and space do you need, for that within this container, within this, yeah, meeting? Like, I it was just really nice to have that opportunity, within, yeah, the loneliness solution, to have like 30 minutes if we needed it for somebody, to share. Like, if it, I mean, I
Yeah.
just love that. Like, and if leaders would take that type of model, it'll make a huge difference. It's hard for leaders because they see this, we got to reach all these goals, all these daily goals, all these weekly goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, and it's like none of that matters, before how everybody in the group is feeling. And like, even if it's not the right job for somebody, or the right class for somebody, or the right group for somebody, taking that time can help people realize that in a healthier way than just kind of steamrolling, or gaslighting, or just avoiding. So
Yeah. And that was also, uh I mean, I think just in general leadership of any form, takes courage, right?
Mhm.
Because
Okay.
a lot of that I was just feeling into, and I was like, oh, this feels like this is the right thing that needs to
Right.
happen right now, and this is the person that needs the time. Because I'll also like going back. Uh, I just remember one time being like, "Yeah, just talk to your connection buddy, and and let me know what they say to you." And then I was like, "Well, look, I told you exactly what I think needs to happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
until you actually try it, my answer isn't
Yeah.
going to change unless you say, "Hey, Nathan,
Yeah.
I tried this, but it didn't work for me." And I'm cool if you come to me that way and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, it didn't
I
work."
love that.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's figure it out. But you guys did such a great job of like also forming those bonds with
Mhm.
each other during the time
Mhm.
where like it didn't. You weren't just looking to me
Mhm.
for the answers, and like you said, I would tell you, hey, we are just trying it. We're gonna see what works together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's it's always it's always an interesting start when you
Yeah,
have to do it for the first time. So when you have to do a whole program for the first time. So yeah,
yeah,
that
a
makes
hundred
sense.
percent. But so you talked about how you're dude right now, and I
Yeah.
think it's interesting because I don't think when we initially went through the process of like the identifying loneliness in the
Mhm.
process, it definitely wasn't a dude chilling on the couch. But I love how that kind of that's what that looks like today. I'm curious
Mhm.
what what's connection look like for you these days.
Okay, what connection look like? Like, okay, that's so we're already talking less terminology and more experience, or
Yeah,
what do we think? Yeah.
yeah, just
So more the
whatever's coming up.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. So, I feel like I've been able to reach the one of my big dreams of having a community, like, and it's feels really good. So I feel very thankful. Connection looks like, I get to go to these meetup groups, via the meetup app. And there's a meetup group called Nerdy 30s. And it's a bunch of, and it's all for, it's like a Nerdy 30 women group. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like this cohort that has different chapters around the US, but I think it's changed a little bit over COVID. But the Portland group was able to survive the pandemic. So, it's basically like, kind of like, loneliness solution. It's, yeah, I mean, it's a closed thing. So, I mean, like anybody can join it, but we're not like connected to other groups
Mm-hmm.
around the US or anything like that. So it's, yeah, just like within Portland. And so we have game nights and yeah, and then some games on the weekend. So like that's board games, card games, and we did a free movie night yesterday, and there's just different types of little events that we do, and we can, yeah, get together and just be around a lot of peers. And so also now that I've been doing it regularly, I get to meet up with some of those people one on one, and that's wonderful. And I think, like, yeah, and also like maintaining my friendships that I've had throughout my life until now that have stayed with me. but
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of them haven't really created like a full community for me before. It's kind of felt like an individual relationship, which is great, but I think it's so important to have a community where you feel seen and heard. And I do, within this one, and like it's and it's a nice one because it's another thing about this community is that I don't feel like I feel like it's open to whoever, if we're having a meetup or if I'm going out with some of these people, it's not like other people can't join it, or like once we're out we can, it doesn't feel like um like it's just specified so carefully. And I also made friends with people I went to acting class with, and I think like it really shows, it's like the determination that it takes to stick through the hard things. Because the class I was taking for a long time, it was hard, like to it's like it created a lot of anxiety for me because the expectations were like high. And but like just trying difficult things, I think is also a cool way to meet people, when you can do it together. Because I just like, for several years before this year, and like, or before the last several months, and like even before the beginning of 2023, like it's just like, I would try to do challenging things, try to challenge myself, but it was really not the same because I most things that I could tackle were things that I kind of had to do in isolation. And or like whether it would be like um starting a new hobby, or reading a certain amount of books in a year, whatever it is. It was just hard to do, and so it's been nice to try hard things with a community too. So
Yeah.
like that creates the connection for me. And it's funny because I can definitely tell that my reputation is definitely the social person. Like she's like
And
like I'm known
how
to
does that
be
make you feel?
social. I love that question. Thank you. I love that. Okay, that makes me feel like like I do feel like that. That's so interesting. I do feel like that's pretty authentic for me.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. So I think like the socializing aspect is quite authentic. I've noticed that like I want to lead out in in socializing, like invite friends to things a little bit more. It's a little bit, but you've got to have that relationship. You have to, for me, connection really comes through like the like trying and trying again. Like it's you cannot just expect a relationship to develop from your first try. Like it's you're gonna, you're gonna be, there's gonna be people who just are, just, aren't gonna be your person, or your people, and, or part of your people. And I think just realizing that that's absolutely okay is just where it's is where it's at. And being okay to just let things be natural and things just happen, because people will come to you, if they really want that relationship with you. It'll, and you keep on trying to make friends. Just I just have to learn this lesson all the time. All the time. It's a never ending learning process.
And what do you think, like, just based on what you said and kind of that label of like now you're being known as the social person of this community,
Yeah.
what do you think that the correct Merrie would think about that.
Oh, the correct Merrie. Oh, good question. Okay, so first off, like I'm just like I'm not sure what my place is in this in that particular in the acting community right now, just because it's like I'm learning like different sides of it and different opportunities within it. So, like it's a label I've been given, but I don't know how much I'll actually have within that. I just don't know. But the correct Merrie, just to get on track with your question. Um oh okay, well, okay. Well, the correct Mary doesn't give a fuck because all correct Mary is correct Mary is a robot, man. Like the correct Mary is like I mean robotic, works 40 hours a week or more, like the correct Mary sucks. So,
Man, yeah, I think that's just powerful in and of itself to
yeah.
be like, okay, this was something that was at one point very important to me,
Yeah.
and I was operating like a robot without
Yeah.
even like that was my quote normal.
Yeah. I
and
mean, I
and
never fully did that because I couldn't. Like cuz I just like completely froze,
yeah,
like because the authentic side which I'm, gaining, like, it's like I talked to my counselor this week or my therapist and I did talk about not feeling authentic to myself within work, but that's, so I think it's or not even with but like myself like even as a like I still am struggling with that, but I do see authentic flavors of myself I think more now and like realizing that it's not just I don't want to go down that correct you know
yeah,
path. I mean it's like even if the correct path has errors you still really have to overcorrect in that correct path, whereas authentic, you can have errors as many times as you need to learn the lesson. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I, that's interesting that you mentioned that because then uh, another conversation, work,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of having
Mm-hmm.
this loneliness come up in work and
Mm-hmm.
like dealing with what's my identity in work came up
Mm-hmm.
for another person. So
Mm-hmm.
that's interesting, and just like to me what that speaks to is I say loneliness isn't a relationship issue, it's an identity issue. And to me it
Okay.
speaks to like, okay, I'm working on figuring out what my identity is in this space. And like you're saying, I'm trying to figure out what's my authentic self. Who
Mm-hmm.
am I authentically meant to be in this
Mm-hmm.
particular role? And that can, like, if you get stuck too long trying to operate as something other than that, it can be really, really challenging.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely. Yeah. And and that's why it's like I needed my own. Yeah, it's like I needed to realize like that, and I have like grown a lot this way that like, my value isn't like it's just in myself. Like it's nothing that I'm producing or anything. Like it's not about my title. So, like it's not because I'm a friend. It's not because I am a professional.
Yeah.
It's not because, like I have an apartment in Portland. None of that is where my value comes from.
That Yeah, I agree with that, but just in the way you frame that is so interesting to me. It's it's not my because, it just
Hmm.
is. My
Hmm.
value is, it just is.
It just is. Yeah. It just like constant. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Um, what was like going through the process, the loneliness solution, what was the process that when we did it, you were like, okay, that was a little bit more challenging than I thought it was going to be?
Oh, that's a good question. More challenging. Honestly, like it's hard. That's a hard question. That's a hard question because most things simplified, you know, how things went. Like that was the thing. Like it was, you know, because it felt like the whole idea of becoming not lonely or, you know, like why we're there, you
Uh
know, it seemed like a mountain, you know, and
huh.
then you made it, you know, and we made it and we all worked together to make it, you know, like a path, like just a flat path. So, you know, yeah, like, so it's a
let me
hard question to answer.
let me ask it
Yeah,
in a
keep
different
going.
way. So,
Sure, 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 sure.
what from people as you were going through the process and you were talking to people, or you were working
Okay.
through some of the processes and you were doing it with people who, like, they weren't part of our group, they were
Mhm.
just in your community, what were they like? What are you, Merrie, what are you doing?
Oh, when they would say that, like
Yeah,
to you mean
would anybody, yeah,
about the loneliness solution or about just
about
my
like,
life?
so what I'm thinking
Yeah,
is
I'm
like,
excited about this. Okay.
when when I said, "All right, everybody, I want you to call three people,
Oh,
and I want you to tell them,
oh
hey,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't pick up this phone call. I'm gonna leave you a message."
Oh, yeah, that was so fun. Yeah, like that was great. I mean, I think like yeah, I mean, I still sense like yeah, no, that's great cuz you know, I am such a expressive person, but like I feel very careful about that because you know, it's just like cuz I've felt rejected, you know, and didn't really know that that was just again part of the process and stuff. And so you know, so I think like for me it just felt like you know felt like myself, like it wasn't like it was just like me actually using my voice, you know, and I don't
uh,
think it was like, oh, this is off for Merrie, you know, like it was just more like, okay, like this is what Merrie meant, you know, or like I could tell that Merrie wants to express, you know, her feelings, you know, to me and be thankful to me, you know, and like some of the things were kind of repetitive stuff that I've been saying to the people I called,
yeah,
but it was still like, you know, but I think that, you know, we don't say I love you or we don't say I appreciate you in the same way. You know, even if we don't use those words, doesn't mean we're not saying it, you know,
mm,
like, and I just love that so much. And, you know, because I used to give myself such a hard time for not using the words I love you know, to the people in my life. And I just was so critical of myself about it. And, you know, I think what I felt comfortable with and not so much that there was an aha moment, maybe there was, I don't quite remember, but like, you know, you weren't trying to tell us you have to tell people I love you for you to be valid in their lives, you know? And like I honestly I heard that message growing up, you know, basically. You know how kids are, you know how other adults
mm-hmm,
are when they're on the, you know, when they see a kid on the phone with their parent or whatever it is, tell them that you love them. You know, I think that's so unhealthy, you know, like unless like you can tell it's like, you know, the kid, but like it's just, you know, people can use the words that feel authentic to them and feel safe to use, you know? And I think like you weren't trying to get us to use words that weren't authentic to us, you
yeah,
know? Like that's the thing. It's like, you know, if it doesn't feel right, don't say it. Like, cause that's going to create inauthentic connections, you
yeah,
know, and feel terrible. And, you know, so to me, because I could kind of just say, you know, say things how I needed to, it wasn't, you know, it was just validating, you know, my feelings that I already expressed to people that are important to me. So
so
yeah,
i
it's good.
i love how you just talked about that because it makes me like the question I then have is like, okay, um, what are ways that you express love that aren't through your words? Like, if you're not going to the I love you, but you, like you just said, you still love people, you still appreciate people. How do you? What's your go-to expression to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like it's similar to like the terminology question where, I'll validate what they're telling me. I'll like, if somebody says like what was it? I'm trying to remember what my friend said today, but I might not be able to remember it. But like, something about like they just felt inadequate or something like that, and it's important to validate that. Like, okay, you felt inadequate. Like, better than just me saying, "Oh, don't say that." It's like, okay, you felt that
Yeah,
way. Like, and so I think that's just like such a helpful way to like show somebody that you care for them, because you're listening to them.
yeah,
And because I think it's, yeah, I mean, that can go for anybody in your life, but I mean, but you're providing that time to the people that you really care for a lot. Since you're providing that time to them, you can show that you're listening and show that you care about their feelings and what they're going through.
all those
I think
four-letter
like,
words.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think like, oh, okay. Can I talk about one of the four letter words? I don't know if
Yeah.
you might have seen it a lot, but like, have you seen It's Just Ken?
Oh
The it's
no.
just
Uh.
So the Barbie movie, you've heard of the Barbie movie
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
coming out. Yeah, and so like they'll say it's Barbie and show Barbie and then they'll have
Oh,
Ken.
it's
It's
just
just Ken.
10.
And I was like, "Oh my word, Nathan."
Yeah, you'll have to send me like find the meme of that and send it to
Yeah,
me.
like it's the advertising. It's yeah, it's one of the catchphrases. Because like they're trying to say that Barbie is this like this person with all these different facets to themselves and everything. And I don't know if they're trying, like, I don't really know what the point is that they're
Yeah.
trying to make with It Just Ken, but I'm like, what a way to just like create isolation from, each other by like putting Barbie on a pedestal and Ken down below. Like, I'm like, ooh, like
Yeah.
that could really be problematic. I mean, fortunately, I love the humor, like, and it's constant. Like the thing about, and I'm, I've been thinking about productions and movies and plays since I've been in acting now. But like, yeah, I mean, what I like about Barbie so far, like that they're advertising, is it's it's pretty constant humor. Like the humor is pretty consistent. So like it's not a serious
Yeah.
differentiation.
One thing that I did see from that movie that I really enjoyed, and it was just a like a 30-second clip or something,
Uh-huh.
but it was Ryan Gosling talking
Yeah.
about like he had to go back and connect to the the Disney Channel kid part of
Right.
himself.
Right.
And he talks about how he had just abandoned that part of himself. And so
Wow.
that kind of is interesting to our conversation here, just for the
Right.
fact of that to me is what happens a lot in loneliness is what we're really doing is abandoning some part of ourself for
Mm-hmm.
acceptance that isn't truly acceptance for the true authentic version of us. It's
Mm-hmm.
acceptance for the version of us that everybody else around us expects from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably so many people that expect Ryan to be a certain way. I mean, just based on his enormous fame and, just all the facets of his fame. So that's kind of neat how he was able to articulate something like that and be vulnerable to share something from the
Yeah.
past, because there's a lot of those individuals who were with him during the Disney Channel days who aren't talking about it, and so I think
Yeah.
just that vulnerability, will create more, will help others feel like that they can do the same thing. I love that.
Yeah. Uh, okay, I just got a couple more questions for you. Number one, Merrie, what do you love about Merrie?
What do I love about Merrie?
Uh,
Oh. In front of God and man, I have to say what I love about myself. Too bad Mary's not a 4-letter word. We could just be like, let's not talk about it. It's a 4-letter word. It's like the way it's supposed to be spelled.
yeah,
It
so
would
you
be.
can't get out of it. No.
Oh my word. Okay.
And remember, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be anything big, extravagant.
Mhm.
It's just what is it right now in this moment?
Yeah. Okay. I love that because it's like, I mean, I honestly, I love to be able to, have that, yeah, metacognition piece to myself. Like I love, being able to think about my feelings, think about my thinking, like, and talk about it, freely and be open to what my intrapersonal relationship is with myself. I do like that. It's something that I feel like is valuable, and I'm happy that we're talking about it because, um, sometimes I put that to aside a little bit, and so yeah, it's really nice. And I let's see. I mean, I really like that. I really prioritize fun, and like, even though sometimes I'll feel like it's like sometimes I will feel kind of lost and try to, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if you remember this, but like you're like, I'm never gonna have fun again. I was like, I have this fear sometimes that, like, the fun will go away. But that's okay. Like, yeah, I love to have fun. I love that I I value that I'm an animal lover, and I take care of my cats that have um you know disability, and they can't. Yeah. And have I told you about my cats? Right?
Uh-uh.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think so. I don't remember.
So they have cerebellar hypoplasia, and they have a hard time balancing on their back feet.
Hey,
So, hey, yeah.
join the club, cats. Okay.
Yeah. They're the best disabled kitties in the world.
uh,
And they like, and I just love being their, yeah, like their caretaker. I feel very honored to be, and, um, very grateful. Here's one of them.
all right, so we balance just about the same. I like it.
Exactly. So this is Peter.
Peter, I do
Yeah.
remember that name though.
Yeah. Right. And, oops. So, um, yeah, really sweet. You know, I, I know that I have a lot of patience, based on feedback I get, and that's okay. Like, I don't want it to just be about feedback, but I do think that if I were less patient, there would be issues, you know,
Yeah.
with people around me. And so, like, I'm so thankful that I, like, constantly realize that, like, there's you know, opportunity for growth and change ahead. Like I feel like I have that solidly in mind. Like I barely
Mhm.
ever get into that or I try not to think about, like this is all right, the one thing I don't think in binary is like I just, very often. I mean, like sometimes if I do like, yeah, and I even though like I've known to compare and I get into that mindset um of being comparing, and that has created loneliness for me at different times. But at the same time, I think um pretty broadly about different topics and different like problems that come my way. Like I don't say like, okay, this person said this and this only means this and this can only be that and it's the only way. I definitely
Yeah.
see the nuances to almost everything. And that can be a problem. But it can be, but most of the time it feels really good to be able to think that way, so that way I can see something and know that that one thing I see is not the full story. That one thing I read is not the full story. I don't, like Ryan Gosling talking about being a Disney kid. That's not the full story. What else is
Mhm.
he thinking about at that moment? What other insecurities is he worried about tackling? So,
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think is important to talk about, or do you have any question for me?
yeah, I okay, you kind of yeah, you kind of hinted on wanting why you were wanting to do these conversations. You were saying you were looking at the videos, right? From
Mm-hmm.
the end
Yeah.
of the loneliness solution. So, yeah, what else has been a motivation to do this again?
Yeah. So, you know, I've been doing a lot of grounding.
Mhm.
And so I'll go like spend 30 minutes outside. And, my whole thought process behind that was like, I was thinking a lot about prayer. And I was thinking how, from my perspective, it seems that we come to that conversation as not a conversation, but a list of demands. And so
Mhm.
I started using this grounding practice to kind of ask, just write down a question in my journal and just
Yeah.
say, okay, let's see if anything comes up over the next
Mhm.
30 minutes or however long. So, like, one of those questions was, how can I use social media for the purpose you've created me?
Mhm.
And like videos like this, the videos talking about masculinity, those are what was shown to me. And
Mhm.
so I've just been leaning into it. And I think I've always wanted to. Like, I admire the people that do those videos, like the ones where they're in a public space and they've got their cardboard sign. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to figure out ways to do things like that aren't just copying
Yeah.
100% of what they're doing, and bring my original self to those type things. And like a perfect example is, I know that regardless of where we are from, like a lot of the world's gone back to some sense of normalcy as far as being in public spaces together. And but there's still whole populations of people that are stuck in
Yeah. Right.
isolation,
Mm-hmm.
with like they don't really have a choice.
Right.
And so I always think about that too when I'm trying my best to create some of this stuff, because I know that there are people that want to connect in some way. And guess what? They're not going to be in the public space to be
Mm-hmm.
able to say, yeah, I really do need a hug today. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how do you do that in a digital space to the best of the ability that we're given to be able to do that type of stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Oof, that's a big that's a that's a big idea to tackle. And I think it's yeah, I think authentic conversations is a good way to promote connection. And whether it's recorded or whether it's with
Yeah.
somebody, I think both can be extremely helpful because you don't know what it is, like a one thing that could be said that could, spark something in somebody's mind to be like, hey, like I relate to that. And, now I feel a little
Yeah.
bit more connected, even just like this much makes a difference. Like it makes a huge difference. And even though I
Yeah.
can't look back and be like, this is the moment necessarily that made this much of a difference, but I'm telling you, just a tiny bit of a connection. It's a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we do a poor job a lot of the time because we're so wired to look so far
Hmm.
into this made up future that we've created
Yeah.
that it's real easy not to acknowledge that little
Yeah.
tiny
Yeah.
piece and how big that is. Like the thing that made me think of is this mom one time telling me that her daughter couldn't tie her shoes,
Yeah.
and uh, this was somebody who was older and I had spent a lot of time with, and I'm like, well, that's not fucking true. There's no way. Like, I spent
Yeah.
enough time around her to know I'm pretty sure she can tie her own shoes.
Yeah.
And but so I untied my shoes one time when the mom was around and
Yeah.
asked the girl to help. I was like, I can't get down there to tie my shoe. Can you help me? And she tied my shoe. But it's a reminder that, like, something that may be that small to you is
Uh-huh.
really a huge, huge thing in the eyes of someone else.
Yeah. 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 And I think that can be a little bit scary to know, it's like that these little things we talk about might be bigger to somebody else. But, it's just like, I think it's so important to speak the vulnerable to the vulnerable side of things. I mean, I wouldn't be able to be where I am without, people sharing their stories as well.
All
It's,
right, here's my
yeah.
last question for you, Mary,
Last one. I
for
don't
this.
want to last. Okay, for this one. Okay, I won't get anxious. It's like Nathan's like, this is our swan song of Mary.
No,
I'd be
I
so mad.
want you to look into to the camera here, and I want you. What's the message that you have for that person on the other end of the camera who right now is experiencing loneliness?
Yeah. Okay. My message to a person who is experiencing loneliness right now is that you are so valuable and you deserve so much. You know, you deserve love. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to live a full life. And you deserve to take all the time you need to get to that point. You deserve to rest as it's so exhausting to feel loneliness. You deserve a hug. You deserve the physical touch you need at any time you need it. You deserve the time that you want with others. It's so important. And in the meantime, just, no, not, and it's not just a just, it's a completely no, completely that, um, that you are valuable as you are right now. Even if you don't feel it, and I acknowledge that you might not feel it right now, but you really are so valuable. Um, like if someone hurt you, if someone um did something that was unexpected and was disappointing, that's can be so heavy, and I want you to know that you deserve to feel better and take all the time you need to feel better, and know that a lot of people really do care for you, but it can't sometimes doesn't feel that way. So just take the next step to connection. That might just be picking up your phone. That might be um, waving at somebody, smiling at somebody, um, asking someone to tie your shoe. Um, just do the next thing to get a connection. Go on the Meetup app. Go on the internet and look for a group that is going to be encouraging. There are so many. And if you know Nathan, he can help you get to know a community a little bit more if you need it. But we're all here for you in this loneliness connection group for you. So just know that you are loved and you're cared for. Okay.
All right, Merrie. It's always fun. You brought so much insight,
Oh,
and
good.
you brought yourself, your vulnerability to the
Thank you.
conversation, and I love